I wasn't supposed to be standing there. That's the honest truth. I work in event coordination, corporate stuff, mostly, and that Tuesday I had a site visit near Windsor that finished 40 minutes early. My colleague had already left. My train wasn't for another 2 hours. So I did what anyone does when they have time and nowhere particular to be. I walked. Not toward anything. Just walked. The kind of walking you do when your brain needs to go quiet for a while. The October light was doing that thing it does in England, where it's not quite warm but it's not cold either, and the shadows go long even at 3:30 in the afternoon. The leaves on the trees lining the path had turned that specific shade of amber that makes everything look like an old photograph. Like the world is trying to remind you it was beautiful before you started paying attention. I had a coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, not really looking at either. And that's when I heard it. Not a shout. Not a crowd. Just laughter. The kind that catches you off guard because it sounds so completely, unreservedly free. The kind of laughter that doesn't know anyone is listening. Children's laughter. I stopped walking. There's a particular quality to laughter that comes from a game that has real stakes, even invented ones. You can tell the difference between children laughing because something is funny and children laughing because someone is winning and someone else very much doesn't want them to. This was the second kind. The competitive kind. The kind where someone is about to lose and absolutely refuses to accept it. I moved slightly without meaning to, just a few steps, instinct more than decision, and through a gap in the hedgerow I could see a stretch of grass. Private, clearly. A garden attached to something I didn't have the angle to fully see. But the grass was immaculate and the afternoon light hit it in a way that made it look almost unreal. 3 children. The youngest was maybe 5 or 6, I thought. He was running, not gracefully, the way children that age don't run gracefully, all elbows and commitment, and he was screaming something at the top of his lungs, though I couldn't quite make it out. The middle one, a girl, was chasing him with the focused expression of someone who has been personally wronged. The oldest was standing slightly apart, hands on his knees, catching his breath, and, from the way the other 2 kept glancing at him, I understood, somehow, that he was the one who made the rules. Or was supposed to. The youngest, the small, wild-haired boy, ran directly into a hedge. Not through it. Into it. Head first and completely committed. And then, he just stood there, stuck halfway, his little legs kicking. The girl stopped chasing him. She stared. Then, she covered her mouth with both hands, the gesture of someone trying very hard not to laugh and absolutely failing, and dissolved. The oldest straightened up. Looked at the hedge. Looked at the flailing legs. And then, he said something. I couldn't hear the words, only the tone, which was the immaculate long-suffering tone of an older sibling who has seen too much, and walked over and pulled the youngest out by the ankles. The youngest emerged with a twig in his hair. He looked at it. Cross-eyed. Tried to grab it. Missed. And all 3 of them lost it completely. I stood there with my cold coffee and I thought, I don't know what I thought, exactly. Something about how laughter sounds the same whether it's coming from a council flat or a palace garden. How children are just children before the world gets its hands on them and starts explaining what they're supposed to be. I didn't know who they were. Not for certain. Not in that first minute. But I had a feeling. The kind of feeling that starts at the back of your neck and moves forward slowly. I looked at the girl, really looked, and there was something in the angle of her face, the way she stood even mid-laugh, a sort of unconscious poise that didn't feel performed. It felt structural. Like the way some people just have good posture without thinking about it because it was built into them. And then, a woman appeared at the edge of the garden. She came around the corner of the building, not rushing, but purposeful, the way someone moves when they're headed somewhere specific, and she was holding what looked like a cardigan. She stopped when she saw the scene. The hedge. The twig. The laughter. Her face did something complicated. Not a smile, not quite. More like the expression you make when something is too much happiness concentrated in one moment, and your face doesn't quite have the architecture for it. She laughed. Just for a second. A real one, not a performed one. Both hands coming up slightly, a breath escaping. And I knew. I want to be careful here, because I'm aware of how this sounds. I'm aware that people see what they want to see, that I had no business being where I was, and that proximity to something doesn't make you entitled to it. So I'll just say this, I don't know with certainty what I witnessed that afternoon. I can only tell you what I saw and what it felt like. It felt like someone's real life. Not a photo call. Not a charity visit. Not a carefully orchestrated appearance designed to communicate warmth and normalcy to a waiting public. Just Tuesday. A garden. 3 children playing a game that had clearly been going on for a while, with rules that had evolved into something complicated and ridiculous, the way children's games always do. And a mother who came to bring a cardigan and got ambushed by laughter instead. She held the cardigan for a while. Forgot she was holding it. The youngest ran toward her and grabbed her around the knees, and she bent down, no hesitation, just down, like gravity, and scooped him up, twig and all. He said something into her neck. She tilted her head to hear him. Then, she laughed again, a shorter one this time, surprised. She looked at the other 2. They were already running back to their starting positions. Resetting. Beginning again. Whatever the game was, it wasn't finished. I left before I should have stayed and left later than I should have gone. That's the honest thing to say about it. There's a version of me that walks on immediately, respects the privacy, keeps moving. And there's the version of me that stood on a public footpath with cold coffee and watched 3 children play a game in the October light and felt something crack open a little inside of them. I chose the cracked open version. I'm not sorry. On the train back, I tried to explain it to my colleague over text and failed. She asked if I got a photo. I said no. She said why not? And I found I couldn't really explain it, the way some things feel too private to document, even when you're not the one they belong to. Even when you're just the stranger who happened to be walking past. There are things you see in other people's lives that don't belong to you. You just get to carry them for a while. 3 weeks later, she talked about it. Not to me, I want to make that clear. I'm nobody. She didn't know I existed. But she mentioned it in an interview, brief and almost offhand, the way you mention something that you haven't decided to make into a story yet. Just a detail. A passing thing. The kind of thing a parent says when someone asks how are the children and the answer is too long and too real for the occasion, so you trim it down to the one funny part. She said the children had invented a game. She said it had been going on for months. She didn't give it a name, I don't think it had one. Or maybe it had 17 names, one per week, the way children rename things constantly. But she described it in the way you describe something that has become woven into the texture of ordinary life. Not a special thing. A Tuesday thing. An after-school thing. A thing that happens when the homework is done and the shoes have been left somewhere they shouldn't be and the afternoon opens up like a door you didn't expect. I sat forward on my sofa. I said, out loud, to nobody, I saw that. Here is what I pieced together, afterward. The game, whatever it is, whatever they call it, involves all 3 of them. That matters. It's not a 2-player game with the youngest tagging along. It's designed, somehow, for exactly 3. For the particular geometry of this sibling configuration, an oldest who knows things, a middle who feels everything, a youngest who has not yet learned to be afraid of hedges. She said the oldest takes it seriously. She said it in a way that implied too seriously, or wonderfully seriously, or both, the way you say things about children when the trait is both endearing and mildly concerning and you love them entirely for it. There is apparently a system. There are apparently conditions. The oldest has adjudicated disputes with a gravity that she described, laughing as she said it, as slightly alarming for a 9-year-old. The middle one, she said, is the wild card. This is the part that got me. Because I'd watched the girl stop mid-chase to laugh at her brother stuck in a hedge, and I'd thought, she's the emotional one. The one who feels the full range at full volume. The one who will cry laughing and laugh crying and never quite be sure which is happening. She said the middle one changes the rules mid-game when she thinks they're unfair. Just rewrites them. Announces the revision. The youngest accepts it because he is 6 and flexible. The oldest protests because he is 9 and the original rules were his. This is apparently the source of 90% of the conflict. The youngest, she said, mostly just runs. She said this with a kind of helpless affection that I recognized, the specific love reserved for the youngest child, who is small and chaotic and full of a terrifying joy that makes you want to put them in a glass case and also let them run directly into every hedge they will ever meet. I've thought about this a lot since October. More than is probably reasonable for a stranger who glimpsed something through a gap in a hedge and then caught a train home. But here's the thing about royal children, the thing that gets lost in all the formal portraits and the careful statements and the very deliberate management of image: they're just children. They're playing the same game every set of siblings has played since the first time two kids got bored in a garden and someone said, "Okay, you're it," and someone else said that's not fair, and it evolved from there over decades and centuries into something that looks complicated from the outside but is really just, we are bored and we love each other and we are not sure how to say that, so we made up a game instead. My brother and I had one. We called it The Thing and it made no sense to anyone but us. I'm 34 years old and I still know the rules. I think about that sometimes. Whether George remembers the rules when he's grown. Whether Charlotte still rewrites them. Whether Louis, wild-haired, hedge-adjacent Louis, still just runs. She talked about it the way parents talk about the small private myths of their family. Not for public consumption. Not really. More like she was asked a question, and the question reminded her of something real, and the real thing escaped before she could decide whether to let it. That's the thing about real things. They don't wait for permission. She laughed, telling it. You could hear it. Not the performance of laughter. The actual thing. And I sat on my sofa and I thought about October and amber light and a small boy with a twig in his hair, and how laughter sounds exactly the same whether anyone is watching or not. Especially when no one is watching. Especially then. I texted my colleague, that thing I saw in Windsor. She talked about it. My colleague texted back, you should have taken a photo. I put my phone down. Some things, I thought, are better as memories. Better as the version that only exists in one person's chest, slightly imprecise, worn soft at the edges like something carried for a long time. The photo would have been evidence. What I had instead was something else. Proof of nothing. Worth everything. My mother used to say that you can tell everything about a family by the way the children fight. Not the big fights, those don't tell you much. Big fights are performance. Big fights are about the audience. No, the small fights. The ones over nothing. Over who sits where and who looked at whom wrong and whose turn it was and why it's always unfair. The small fights are the ones that have been earned. The ones that come from being so close to someone, living so inside their orbit, that friction becomes the primary language. She used to say, if they're fighting, they're attached. Worry when they stop. I've been thinking about that since the interview. Because the game, whatever it's called, whatever the rules are this week, isn't really about the game. It's about 3 children who live in one of the strangest, most surveilled, most pressure-laden circumstances in the world, and who have built themselves a small private universe that belongs only to them. A universe with its own logic. Its own justice system, apparently, administered by a 9-year-old with alarming gravity. Its own constitutional amendments, filed by a 7-year-old who will not accept conditions she finds unfair. Its own wild, hedge-crashing chaos, embodied by a 6-year-old who is just running. Just always running. That game is theirs. Not the country's. Not the institutions. Not the cameras. Theirs. I've been trying to explain something to people when this comes up and I keep failing, so let me try again. There's a particular kind of public figure, and royals are the extreme end of this, but it applies more broadly where the personhood gets slowly buried under the role. Where the human being inside the position becomes almost theoretical. Where everything they do gets processed through the lens of what it means or what it signals or who benefits and who doesn't. Even the good moments. Even the real ones. I've watched people take the interview, her talking about the game, laughing, giving nothing except the ordinary fact of her children being children, and, within hours it was, this is PR, or this is image management, or this is a calculated display of normality designed to rehabilitate. Maybe. I don't live inside the machinery. I don't know. But, I was standing on a footpath in October and I heard the laughter before I knew who it belonged to. And, it was not calculated. Laughter that free doesn't come with a budget. The game matters because it's theirs. But, it also matters because of her. She talked about it the way you talk about something when you are, genuinely, slightly in awe of it. Not of yourself as a parent. Of them as people. As these fully formed, already surprising people who got assembled under your roof and are becoming, constantly and daily, themselves. There is a particular brand of parental love that is mostly just bewildered. Stunned. Like, I made this. How did I make this? Look at this. Look at what they're doing now. That's what I heard in her voice. Not the polished version. Not the version that's been media trained and talking pointed and packaged for public consumption. The bewildered version. The standing in a garden holding a cardigan version. The one who laughed when she saw a 6-year-old stuck in a hedge. I have a friend Emma, she works in pediatric nursing, and she says that the games children invent tell you more about their development than any assessment. That what they choose to play, how they assign roles, how they handle cheating and loss and rule changing, all of it is data. Rich, complicated, specific data about who these particular humans are and who they're becoming. I told her about what I'd seen. I didn't tell her who. She said, the one who makes the rules is working something out. Some 9-year-olds need order because the world feels unpredictable. Building a game with rules they control is a way of practicing control. It's healthy. I thought about that. She said, the middle one changing the rules isn't being difficult. She's testing whether the structure can flex. Whether it breaks or bends. Whether love survives disruption. Also healthy. I said, and the one who just runs? She smiled. He's 6. He just wants to run. That's the whole deal. I've thought about what it must be like, in a limited, stranger's way, the only way available to me, to be the person who gave these 3 people to each other. That's what parents do, really. They don't just raise children. They curate a specific set of relationships that will outlast them. They put these people in the same house and let them crash into each other and fall out and repair and fall out again and build, over years, a private vocabulary of inside jokes and invented games and the particular shorthand of people who have been through the same Tuesday 4,000 times. She gave George to Charlotte and Louis. She gave Charlotte to George and Louis. She gave Louis to both of them. And they made a game. It has a rule maker and a rule changer and someone who just runs. What a specific, perfect thing. My mother's been gone for 6 years. I don't know why I'm saying that here, in the middle of this. Maybe because the October afternoon felt like hers, that particular quality of light, the amber, the long shadows. Maybe because I've been thinking a lot lately about what remains when the ordinary Tuesdays are over. The small myths. The private games. The things that don't photograph. My brother still knows the rules to the thing. He texted me last month, completely out of nowhere, still counts if the pillow touches the floor first, right? I texted back, always counted. It was always the rule. That's what games are actually about. Not the rules. Not even the winning. The shared world you build with the specific people who were given to you. The one that lives only between you and them. The one that still exists, 20 years later, in a text message at 11 at night. I went back to Windsor in January. Different reason, another site visit, same kind of corporate nothing. But, I took the same walk after. Same direction. Same footpath. The light in January is a completely different animal to October. No amber. No warmth. Just that thin, silver English winter light that makes everything look like it's been left out too long. The hedgerow was bare. I could see through it clearly. The garden was empty. Of course it was empty. It was a Wednesday in January and the children were at school and the afternoon was cold and, whatever the game is, it doesn't run in empty gardens in January. It runs whenever they're together and bored and the afternoon opens up and someone says something and someone else argues and the youngest starts running before anyone has finished explaining the rules. I stood there for a minute anyway. The grass was still immaculate. I want to talk about what she said in the interview, specifically. Not the subtext I'm reading into it. Just what she said. She said, they made it up together. 4 words. She moved past them immediately, onto the next thing, the way you move past something that seems obvious to you. But, I haven't been able to move past them. They made it up together. Because that is not nothing. That is actually, in the context of these 3 specific children, living this specific life, carrying the specific weight of what they were born into, that is extraordinary. They didn't get assigned roles and told to perform togetherness. They didn't get given a professionally designed educational game with age-appropriate learning outcomes. They got bored. And they made something. Together. The oldest brought the structure. The middle one brought the flexibility. The youngest brought the chaos that makes it worth playing. They made a complete thing out of 3 incomplete parts. I keep coming back to the question of what they'll remember. Not the formal things. Not the ceremonies and the formal portraits and the careful occasions. Those will exist as photographs and records and they'll look at them when they're grown and recognize themselves in them the way you recognize yourself in old photos. Yes, that was me, but I don't quite remember being inside it. What they'll remember is the game. The particular smell of the grass if you press your face into it. The cold of the garden in the last light. The sound their own breathing makes when they've been running and have to stop. The feeling of the rules being argued, loudly, by someone who finds them inadequate. The feeling of winning, that specific, complicated mixture of triumph and guilt when you beat someone you love. The feeling of being the youngest, behind and always slightly breathless, trying to catch up with people who are taller and faster and older but who, crucially, wait. They always wait. That's the thing about games made up by siblings. Someone always waits. I've been a professional event coordinator for 12 years. My job is, fundamentally, making things look effortless that are not. I build atmospheres. I choreograph emotions. I create the conditions for people to feel things on schedule. It is nothing like watching 3 children play a game they invented. That has no schedule. No objective. No deliverable. It doesn't optimize for anything. It exists for the pure, circular, self-justifying reason that it is theirs and it is happening and, somewhere in the middle of it all 3 of them are more completely themselves than they are at any other point in the day. Maybe that's the whole point of childhood. Not the development. Not the milestones. Not the assessments and the school reports and the careful management of a future that hasn't arrived yet. Just an afternoon in a garden with the specific people you were given. Making something up. Running into a hedge. She smiled when she said it. That's the detail I keep returning to. Not a public smile. Not the composed, diplomatic expression that gets deployed in formal settings and that you can recognize from 50 feet away as a managed thing. A small one. Private. The kind that escapes before you've decided to let it. The kind that means, I know something beautiful and I can't quite help that it shows. She's been through well. The whole country knows what she's been through. It's been public and ugly and it was watched and commented on and everyone had a take and none of the takes were hers to give. She was ill and then, recovering and then, there were questions and then, there were answers and none of it was anyone's business but it became everyone's business because that's the contract her life has with the world, a contract she didn't entirely write. And, in the middle of all of that, in some October garden, her children were playing a game. George was adjudicating disputes with alarming gravity. Charlotte was filing constitutional amendments. Louis was running directly into a hedge. And the world kept going, and the machinery kept running, and out here the amber light was doing that thing it does in the afternoon. And she laughed. I think about the kind of mother that produces that laugh. Not the perfect kind. Not the curated kind. Not the kind that shows up in approved photographs with matching outfits and careful composition. The kind who comes around a corner with a cardigan and gets stopped in her tracks by laughter. The kind who forgets she's holding the cardigan. The kind who bends all the way down without thinking because a small person ran at her knees and, of course you catch them, of course you do, gravity is nothing compared to that. The kind who talks about a made-up game in an interview and smiles without meaning to. The kind whose children made something together, out of nothing, on a Tuesday afternoon. That's the thing that stays. Not the ceremony. Not the titles. Not even the photographs. The game without a name. The rules that keep changing. The youngest who just runs. And a mother in a garden, holding a cardigan, laughing at something she had no idea was going to be this beautiful when she started. My train home from Windsor in January was delayed 40 minutes. I sat on a cold platform and I thought about the empty garden and the bare hedgerow and the silver light, and I felt, strangely, okay about all of it. About the October thing I saw and the January thing I didn't. About the interview and the detail she let slip and immediately moved past. About the fact that I'm a stranger who felt briefly, inexplicably close to something private and real, and then the gap in the hedge closed and the light changed and the train eventually came. Some stories don't belong to you. You just get to be near them for a minute. You get to carry the weight of them lightly, in your chest, on the walk home. And, somewhere, in a garden you'll never see again, 3 children are playing a game they made up themselves, the one who makes the rules, the one who changes them, and the one who is already running, before anyone has finished explaining where they're going. Still running. Always.